Hello and welcome to another board game video that we are putting out there because we got a lot of requests after I did the tour of the room. A lot of requests about how we built this board game table we're sitting at. We wanted to make a video where we kind of went through the whole process because it was something new to us. We never built tables before, and frankly it was something that was scary for me. Like, I didn't think we could do it. We wanted to make this video to kind of show you that it's not so scary, and I think with a good plan and just a few tools, anybody can do it. So the plan here is we didn't take video of the build process because we didn't have this camera, for example, when we were building it, but we have a lot of photos of the whole process of building the entire table. And we're going to look at the photos and kind of talk about them and go through the whole process with you guys because, like I said, building a table is definitely a daunting thing to think about.
Yeah, so we did a lot of research. We watched YouTube videos and time lapses of other people making their tables, and what we...
Like tons of them, like tons.
What we learned was the things we didn't want to do.
Yeah, and I think that was a big reason why we went this route, as far as just building it ourselves, because we wanted something very specific. And not to say that there's not manufacturers out there that can give you that, but we didn't want to have to worry. We
didn't want to break the bank either.
Yeah, we didn't want to break the bank. We had the confidence that we could pull it off, and we wanted to make a table that was just exactly what we were looking for, without anything extra.
Right,
so.
But as a compromise for not breaking the bank, we didn't want to lose out on the quality. We didn't want to do 2x4s out of pine or anything like that.
Yeah, no way. No. And my father taught me a lot growing up as far as building and like putting things together.
I actually worked in my grandfather's wood shop in his basement a few times.
Not to say that we like gained all these skills from doing that sort of stuff. Like, I don't want that to make you think, oh, we can't accomplish this. But we had a little bit of background, but I promise you, after we had a set plan and looked into the methods of how to do it, it was so easy to accomplish. And we were able to build exactly what we wanted. Like I said, the biggest thing is you go to these table manufacturers and you're spending a lot of money and you're getting what you want, but you're also getting a lot of stuff that maybe you don't need. And there's some extra money there that maybe you could save.
Right. Plus, they do have typically some limitations. Like, they have customizability, but only within these options.
Right. Yeah. And with this, we were able to build exactly what we wanted. We are not professionals. We built this based on our knowledge and the research we did, and I'm sure that we did a lot of things that aren't like correct when you're talking about furniture manufacturing. But like Courtney said, we watched a ton of videos. I did research for weeks because, if anything, I was more scared to do this than Courtney was.
Yeah, I was pretty confident we could do it.
Yeah, and I'm the kind of person that's like, well, I want to pay a professional to just do it right.
I'll be honest, I think part of it is that we were just both growing impatient, and when we looked up like the lead time for buying
one, it
was
like weeks.
Nope.
Yeah.
I want it now.
And to give you some background, the house before we moved here, our previous house, I had finished the basement a little, like a small room in the basement. The ceiling was literally like really low, and we were just playing off of like a folding table, and then we found a table in a barn, like 100-year-old table. And we had that for the longest time, but while it was sturdy, it was like wobbly, and it was an old table, and I love the table. We still have it, but we always found that we were wanting something more reliable, I guess you could say. So when we finally had the space to do it, we built a table. So let's just get into it. A lot of people don't realize when you go to a lumber yard or say Lowe's or Home Depot, when you're looking at, say, a 2x4, it's not actually 2 inches by 4 inches. That is, there's some kind of regulation in place that allows them to call it a 2x4, but it's really like a 1 3/4 by 3
it's kind of a large window. It's like it can be all the way up to like a 1/4 inch less, and it's better for the companies to use less materials and make more money. So it's always going to be less than the actual measurement.
But that's really important when drawing up plans, and I'll put an image up right now of one of the many sketches that I did. I planned this table over the course of like 2 weeks. I drew it over and over and over to try to figure out measurements that would work. I also took a lot of trips to like Lowe's to see what kind of measurements. Well, to see what options of wood I had available to me, because that helped me determine how to build the table and what size to make everything. So a lot of this planning had to do with, okay, I have access to this size wood. How can I make a table easily using this wood and make everything kind of work together? I have an outline of the frame, and then on the right there is the insert, and we made the insert. What was most important to me was the size of the play area before anything else. So we decided to make the play area 36 inches by 60 inches, which is 3 feet by 5 feet. And I feel like that is the perfect size to not make it too big and not make it too small. You don't want to be reaching across a giant table to try to play games, but you also don't want to have it so small that you can't fit anything. We discussed for a while if we wanted to do a single solid piece for the top or 2 half pieces, and we decided on 2 halves because it would be easier to manage taking off. Taking off a giant piece of wood
would have been really heavy.
It would have been super heavy and just cumbersome. You couldn't do it with
one person.
And storing it. Where are you going to put it? At least with the 2 halves, you can take them and stack them together against a wall somewhere, right? And then the last bit, which was also very important to me, was the size of the side rail, where you're going to be leaning over. Again, it was something that we had to figure out the perfect depth. You didn't want it too deep, where it was you were reaching really far to play, and you didn't want it too shallow, where it was uncomfortable to lean on for like an hour or two, because we have long play sessions.
Right. Well, and another part about like the rails was figuring out how we wanted them joined. Because, you know, if you're working on molding in a house or something, you would need it to cut them a certain way to join them together. And as he said, we're not experts, so we don't have a wood shop to work with. We have some tools, but not anything crazy. So we had to really plan for, well, how are we going to make this happen? So we had to make it as easy as possible.
And that was one of the reasons why I think I took 5 or 6 trips to Lowe's to see what wood options I had, because I wanted to make it so that I could figure out mathematically how to work with the wood options I had without having to cut them that much. So I was able to figure out, okay, if I use like 1x6s, I can make the rails that size, and that will work with the frame pieces that I have, which are this size. So it was a lot of figuring that sort of stuff out. But anytime you go to build anything, having a really good plan ahead of time makes it worlds easier. And like I said, I think I planned this. I drew up probably, I don't know, almost 20 different drawings trying to figure out the best way to pull this off, the easiest way to pull this off, and a way that we could build it without needing specialized tools. Because all we have our drill, we have a circular saw, and that's it. That's all we use.
Well, not a circular saw. We have a mini table saw.
Well, I have a miter saw that I use too, but it was just those 3 things. It was the miter saw, the circular saw, and a drill. And you don't even need the miter saw. I think I barely used it. I used it, if anything, to make things go a little quicker. There's only one other tool we use that I did have to purchase, but we'll talk about that in the next picture. The main table itself is all oak. And that was something that was really important because I wanted a table that would last. And you need hardwood for something like that. And oak also looks really nice. I would not recommend building a table like this with pine because it is too soft. It's going to not last, and you're going to be disappointed.
Easily.
It warps. You're going to be disappointed with that. And this is one of those things where it's just spend a tiny bit more, and you'll be way happier with the results.
Well, and because there's 3 words that should rule all building projects forever and for always: square, level, plumb.
Oh, yes. Taking a little extra time while you're doing it or in the beginning will save you tons of time at the end.
Because if you're ever so slightly off on one joint, every single joint is off exponentially more as you go.
And I'm notorious for not having patience. Like, I'm so excited to build it and so excited to get to the end.
And that's why I'm here.
Yeah, so she keeps me grounded. This was a photo of most of the materials. The boards, which we actually had them cut at Lowe's so that we could fit them in the car, because we wouldn't have been able to fit them in the car otherwise.
This is my shout out to Honda, by the way.
Honda HRV.
My Honda HRV is so amazingly practical and versatile.
Yeah. But a lot of people don't realize that you could just get stuff cut at Lowe's. So next is just a picture of how the materials I needed to pick up to put the table together. To put the table together, I did a bunch of research and found that pocket screws was the best way to go about it. Didn't get a picture of the actual specialized tool, but something we did have to invest in was a guide to put in pocket screws. And what pocket screws allow you to do is put together materials like wood boards and have a very strong connection. And it also hides the screws within the board itself because it drills them at an angle. Having that was it saved us. The joints were way stronger, and it was the best way to go about it, in my opinion. Being an amateur, I guess, the furniture maker.
Yeah, I think because we didn't have specialized tools for joining, the strongest way to join with fasteners is a pocket screw. And the reason is because it goes diagonal through the grains instead of going with or perpendicular to the grains.
Yeah, and that was something very important to us we wanted to build the table so that it wouldn't wobble or be weak in any place. And without this kind of connection,
your corners go like this.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement when you just screw boards together, it's not going to be as structurally sound. So I did a bunch of research on how we should join the boards and how to do this, and this seemed to be the easiest way without having to cut dovetails and glue everything together, and it basically the easiest way to build a table without having a wood shop.
And it wasn't a big investment either. It's a guide and the set of screws.
Yeah, I think the guide was $30, $35, and then the screws, you're going to need fasteners to put the table together. And then the clamp was vital to hold the boards in place so that you could attach them. The next picture here is when we first laid out the rails and the insert. Now for the insert in the middle, we used MDF board. It just seemed to make the most sense.
It was nice and solid. I think, since this is going to be the primary location that you're going to be rolling die and stuff, it wouldn't give that hollow sound that some wood can make. Because MDF... It's very muted, solid.
Well, MDF is used in speaker boxes. So having a material like that is going to be good for acoustics. Not to say that's what we were focused on, but it just made the most sense for us to make that insert out of MDF. What I did was I got the rails together, I cut them to size, and we laid it out to make sure that everything worked.
We also did this so that we could decide which sides of the board had the nicer looking grain.
Right. The next photo here is basically what you'd say this is the core of the table, really?
Yeah, this is the main structure of the
main
table.
Structure, yeah. Now one thing that we discussed was we wanted to upholster the insert, the play area, but we wanted to make it so that if something were to happen, we could easily fix the table. And a lot of the other tables we were looking at, this was part of the table. So if something happened to the fabric, it would be a big ordeal to replace it. So what we decided on is building a structure that we could drop the insert into in order to easily replace it, or even have multiple inserts. We were talking, because we play D&D too, and I was even thinking of maybe making an alternative insert with a grid on it or something like that. One thing that Courtney figured out is we should probably have these corner braces to just make to have less flexing and more strength. So we put the corner braces on here to hold the insert in, and this worked out great.
Yeah, it was really specifically for bracing the corners of the insert, because the way that we had the bars spaced out, there wasn't really an extra piece on the end. It would potentially wobble. If you got up and you put your arm on the insert, it could whoa.
Well, not only that, but also it would kind of twist the whole structure. And that's another point to the pocket screws is if you were to say take this and attach the boards together by drilling through the sides, it wouldn't be as strong as using pocket screws. So we put the corners on there not only to help hold the insert, but to keep it more square. And then the next picture is the most exciting, is we got the rails on. And basically what we did, I know you saw earlier, we had the rails kind of lined up around the insert on the floor. We did the same sort of thing, and then we laid the frame that you saw in the previous picture on top, and then we used pocket screws to attach the frame to the rails. And it was as simple as that. But the pocket screws really shined here. This was the best way to go about it, because we were able to go up from the underneath, or go up through the frame in a way that would hide all of the screws. Yeah, this was exciting for me because the table started like taking shape, you know?
Well, I think so too, because those rails were the first like highly visible part of the table.
Yeah, yeah.
Where the frame, you're not really going to see it most of the time.
Yeah. So moving on from there, we took the insert out, flipped the whole thing over, and you can kind of see the center structure, and then we added the outer structure of the table, the main frame, if you will, which was also pocket screwed into the rails. And you can kind of see along the bottom, the side closest to us, you can see the 4 holes. That's where the pocket screws are. And even on the upper rail, you can see them go along. And that just ensured that the rails would be held down tight and everything was square. But it also let us beef the table up a little bit.
Yeah, so the other things to see in this picture that are new from the last time you saw it upside down, it's in between. We put leftover pieces from... was it from cutting the legs, or we had an extra leg? Yeah, it was from cutting the legs.
No, so we the legs were they were a little bit too long, so we cut them a length, and then we used the extra pieces to put in between the inner frame and the outer frame. Now this actually goes back to in the beginning when I mentioned that I tried to figure out a plan that worked with the wood sizes that I had. I knew that the in-between was the exact same width as the legs, and I knew that we'd want more stability without making the table weigh a ton. And I think that's that's something that a lot of people get wrong, is they build the table so beefy that it's super heavy and you can't lift it, like you can't move it. It's just way too heavy.
You have to build it in place because you're not moving it.
Yeah, so putting the extra pieces in there allowed for more stability without adding a ton of weight. And of course we used oak, which is super strong. So that was also a big benefit.
Well, it wasn't necessarily just about stability, but when you have 2 long rails like that, you really have to think about over time, humidity and temperature changes will make them warp. And if there's nothing holding its shape, they'll kind of go in and out a little. They'll flex.
People just leaning on it, playing. Like, we had to think about that stuff, and without that inner structure, it would bow in. But the other thing you can see here, before we move to the next, is we put the legs in, and the legs are actually attached using 2 lag bolts on each, which allows us to undo it. And they have bolt heads on the end, so I used a ratchet to ratchet them in, and then we can ratchet them out and take them out. And between taking the legs off and being able to take the insert out, moving the table is like a breeze.
We had to move it up a set of stairs.
Yeah.
To a hallway that wasn't super large. Like, there wasn't really a good pivot point. So we had to make this movable.
Well, you guys are going to see, throughout the process, it moves a few times, actually. So if we move on to the next picture here, we flipped it over after we put it all together, and this was the first time we really, saw it. And
we were able to, kind of test the sturdiness of it.
Yeah, test the sturdiness, make sure everything was where we wanted it to be, the size, the height, everything. And then I believe the next picture is me celebrating. This was the most satisfying moment, was finally just seeing it. Even though it's not finished, just seeing the table, seeing the size of everything, and I love how simple we designed it.
Yeah, I know one thing is seeing the 2D drawing and kind of doing minor tests here and there in the planning process. That's how we decided on the 6-inch rails and everything like that. That's one thing. But when you actually put it together and go, okay, this is what I expected. Right. This is how I wanted it to feel. I didn't overestimate how thick I wanted the rails. So that was a really kind of a moment of victory.
Yeah, for sure. Of course, we're not anywhere close to being done.
No.
But it was that moment where we pulled it off. We did it.
And I think after this moment, or maybe another picture, we had actually called it a night after that first day.
Yeah, this was the okay, let's call it. But really satisfying to finally see it like this. So then we start moving on to all the finishing steps, because that's the main structure. The table is together. Next, you can see we moved it down into our basement.
And actually,
that's the old table right there.
It's propped up on the old game table.
Yeah, now the old game table, you can see it's broken in the middle, like open. It would expand out to like 9 feet. So to fit the new table, we expanded it a little bit without putting the leaves up. Next to it, actually laying on top, you can see one of the table toppers, which I don't think we got too many pictures of the build process, but that was literally just having Lowe's cut the boards to shape, and then you can see we put rails on them to help line them up with the opening of the table. You can see we took the legs off nice and easy, and we were able to bring it downstairs. So this photo, the next photo here, is the 3 pieces of the table topper, and this actually altogether is one board. We had them cut the table topper sizes we needed for the 2 pieces, and then we had a spare.
I think it came 8 feet long.
It's 4 by 8. Yeah, 4 by 8. So it was way too big for what we needed. So we had them cut the sizes we needed, and then we had the extra piece, but we made it into a smaller table topper so that we could have one side with a table topper for, say, like Dungeons and Dragons with a DM.
Or like a snack table. Like if you were playing smaller games on one side, you could put stuff on that surface.
And it was like, why not? We have this extra piece of wood. Why would we not use it?
Oh, and to clarify, this piece isn't solid wood. This is actually...
This is plywood.
It's oak
plywood.
Veneer plywood.
So if you wanted to do the table, like the tabletop of just oak, you would have to buy a bunch of oak boards and join them. But we didn't have a wood shop, so we couldn't do that. That would be the proper way to go about this, but we got the plywood, we edged it, and it's worked out perfectly. Mm-hmm. So, and if something happens, we can just make another one.
That was actually my learning experience with this table. Almost everything else we did I kind of had seen before, except pocket screws. Mm-hmm. But edging the plywood was brand new to me, and I always thought it was this complex process, but it's literally an iron. You iron it on.
It's basically wood. it's wood tape edge, and you put it on the edge, and then you iron it to glue it. And then you could sand it to shape and everything like that, but it was perfect for what we were doing. The next few pictures are the process of staining the table. So whenever you stain wood, there's 3 important steps. Well, I guess 2 main ones. You want to pre-treat all your wood, and then you want to stain it. Pre-treating it will help make the stain even. It'll
it
look
helps
more even.
Bring it in.
Yeah,
so it doesn't just soak into the grain. It'll...
Exactly, yeah. So definitely pre-treat your wood if you're going to be staining it. And then moving on, we start to stain the wood. These 2 pictures that you'll be seeing here are the table toppers. And then we have the table itself. So the first picture is the pre-stain. Just it's soaked with pre-stain. And then we can see that's the first coat of stain. And
now the reason we put the legs on and we like propped up the table is so that we could really determine from both a sitting position, standing position, and like on the ground position, everywhere that you could actually see.
Right, we didn't want to miss anything.
You don't necessarily have to stain every square inch. You just need to stain anything exterior that not only can you see, but you might touch.
Right.
Because it'll have a different feel.
Yeah, exactly. So we stood it up, stained it all, did 3 or 4 coats of the stain. The next picture here, you can see it's much darker.
We ended up with 3 coats.
Yes, we did 3 coats. After that was soaking, we moved on to the cup holders. One thing I wanted with this table was to not have drinks on it. Because that's like a big anxiety thing for me, is like a big fear, is just watching a drink in slow motion spill across everything.
Well, and for me, it's just the cup rings if you forget to use a coaster, because sure, you could get coasters for everybody, but not everybody's going to remember to grab one and use it.
And it just made the most sense. If we're going to build a table, why not put cup holders? So we figured out a way to incorporate them, but not have it be something that was easy to add and remove if we didn't like them. So the next picture here is all of the parts for the cup holders, and you can see the boards of wood at the top. One of them is not cut yet. I don't know why. I must have forgot to cut that one before I took this picture. So these are all the pieces out. And then the next picture here is them these are the drawers themselves put together and stained. And then moving on from there, we dismantled the table and brought it all up into the game room to do the final steps. So this photo here is in the game room. We put down a tarp because next was the polyurethane.
We wanted to do the polyurethane in the room it was going to be in because polyurethane can be a little weird about how it dries. It may not dry evenly at first.
Well, also dust.
So
we didn't want dust falling in it. And
right,
stuff like
and
that.
you don't want to like have to pick it up and move it a lot and jostle it around when it's still settling, because you'll get lots of blemishes in the finished coat.
Yeah, I think 3 or 4 coats on it. Not too many. You don't want to do too much.
Yeah, you don't want it to be like a shiny plastic surface, like a bar.
Yeah, no, we didn't want that. We still wanted to feel the wood. The next picture here are all the cup holders getting their coats, and then we get into the fun parts. All of the finishing touches. You could see we have the cup holders. In the cup holders...
Which we got the cup holders just on Amazon.
Yeah, we got everything on Amazon. The fabric was from local craft stores, but you can see the cup holders there. In the cup holders are pins that I picked up, like drawer pins, to stop them from coming all the way out when you open up the cup holder.
Stoppers.
Yeah, you can see we have the fabric there and some batting to give it a little bit of a cushion. And then that roll, that long white roll, is actually foam padding, like sticky foam padding for the table toppers, so that we could put them on the table toppers, that at least the parts that would rest on the rails, so that we could put the table topper on without worrying about scratching up the rails with like wood on wood contact. Right. And then you've got some spray glue, that's Gorilla spray glue for the upholstery. And then the soft touch, in the center there, those are actually rubber feet for the legs so that the table doesn't slide around. And then the staple gun. We didn't actually have one, so we picked one up for this to upholster the table. Courtney was definitely better at this. She's done this before. I had not. So I kind of let her take charge, and I just did the heavy work.
Yeah, so I'll talk about this too.
Yeah, so what this first picture we're looking at here.
So when I was younger, my mom and I would constantly reupholster our dining room chairs just to update the look of a room. So I had some experience and knew what to look for. For the batting, I actually chose an iron-on batting. It's kind of like felt with a beaded glue on one side. Mm-hmm. So we lay it as flat as we can. You can still see there's like a center fold in it, but that didn't matter too much.
No, but we sprayed it.
It comes out.
We sprayed it with glue first. We sprayed the MDF with glue, and then we laid this down.
Yeah, that way it held while I was ironing, because one of the worst things you could do is start ironing and then it slides.
Yeah.
Because then your glue's going to come off the felt and it's not going to adhere.
We did 2 layers of it.
Yeah, we did 1 layer and felt it didn't have the right amount of cush for dice rolling.
So one thing I wanted was enough of a cushion. Cards. Yeah, enough of a cushion so that if you have cards laid out, you can kind of push down a little bit to pick up the card instead of having to try to grasp at it. And we were playing, for years we had a neoprene mat we'd play on that had a little bit of a give so that you could pick up cards and stuff easier. So that was one thing I really wanted, and we found that 2 layers of this batting was perfect.
Yeah, and we actually looked about going down the neoprene mat route, and expensive. That was really expensive.
To get a mat this size, we'd have to order it online, and it was going to be very pricey. And you might have access to that kind of stuff, and if you do, I would recommend that over the batting. But the batting we could just get at our craft store. It was cheap and easy.
Yeah, and if you spill coffee on your neoprene, it may or may not come out. If you spill coffee on the felt, you can take the insert out and reupholster it. Yep. And it's nice and cheap.
So this next picture here is just kind of showing the underside where we folded over the micro suede. We just got a big sheet of micro suede, red. And with upholstery, you just pull it tight, staple it, move on, staple it. There
is a little bit of practice in how you fold the corners. If you've ever done like a hospital fold on a bed, that's kind of how it is.
The corners are the trickiest part, but I think what's most important is making sure that you're pulling it tight, because otherwise you're going to have wrinkles on the top.
Another handy hint is you can use your iron on the felt padding. Do not use an iron on micro suede.
Oh, don't do that. You'll ruin it. And you can use whatever fabric you'd like. I like the feel of micro suede with playing board games, so that's just what we went with.
It makes cards slide nice.
Makes cards slide nice. A lot of people use felt, but I don't like felt because it gets too pilly, really easy. Whereas micro suede is more of a luxurious kind of feel without breaking the bank. And now we move on to the final steps. So in this picture you can see we've got the table is pretty much done, the main structure.
The thing you didn't see before is this is the cup holders.
Oh, the cup holders
the test
are mounted.
fit. We put them in and we're like, oh, good, they fit.
Yeah, so I made the rails like the slider so that I could just screw them on, slide the drawer in with the cup holder, and put the pins on the back so it wouldn't pop out. And you can kind of see them in some of the pictures. Or in this picture in particular, you can see the pins on the back of the cup holders so that they don't pull all the way out when you pull them out. But I wanted to make the cup holders so that if they didn't work out, or if somebody maybe leaned on them and broke it, I could easily just build a new one and put it right on. So that was important to me. I think a lot of this build was making sure that if something happened, we could fix it without it being like a really big deal.
Yeah, and especially if one of these were to break, we made sure that there weren't too many fasteners, like you're not taking a bunch of screws out.
Keep it simple. That's going to make your life way easier and everything down the road much easier. And then we put the insert in, and this is when we finally saw the table together. And this was super satisfying to see. Mm-hmm. Like everything came together and it made everything worth it. And then the next picture here is with the cup holders pulled out, and you can kind of see the placement. Now we had to compromise the placement with the cup holders on the end because of the cross braces that we put in.
If you're sitting on the end of the table, you have so much real estate to begin with, it doesn't really get in the way.
Yeah, it doesn't really get in the way. I wish I could put them further toward the edge, but I didn't want to compromise the structure of the table, and not everybody uses the cup holders. So I just wanted to have that as an option. The next one is actually a clip that I'll play, and we'll watch it here. That was super satisfying to do.
Yeah. Although with the volume on, it's a super creepy video.
It's all slow motion, yeah. But that was the first thing we did on the table, was just threw a whole mess of dye.
And that was for me, really, because I wanted to make sure I made the right choice with the double batting, and that the micro was suede, and everything rolled nice. It didn't go dead right away.
Yeah, it was perfect. So the next picture here, we brought up the table toppers, and you can see there's the two main ones that cover the whole table, and then the third that's a little smaller. And then we put them on. This is the two toppers. And then this final picture is with the chairs and the table toppers, and you can see it's a perfect size table.
And the chairs are like the right height too. We didn't want awkwardly tall chairs, but we didn't want ones that didn't really have back support, because if you're playing a D&D session with our group, it's 4 or 5 hours.
Well, that's
sitting.
Most people. You're going to be sitting for a while, and you want a chair that's comfortable. But again, we didn't want to spend a ton of money. We wanted to find something that was cheap enough that we're not breaking bank, but it's nice enough that it's not going to feel cheap. And these are all on Amazon. They were super inexpensive, and they worked out perfectly. Another thing that's important when building a table is making sure that the height is not too tall. And one thing that you have to keep in mind is if you're going to be building a table topper, is you want to incorporate your decision. Well, you want to make sure your decision on height incorporates the table topper, because you never want to make a table that's like perfect height without a table topper, and then you put the table topper on it, it's like uncomfortable.
You're like up here.
Yeah. So that's important too.
I think they said standard table height is 31 inches. It's like
31
like to 34.
It's lower than you would think. I know when I saw the measurements, I was like, tables are taller than that.
Yeah, I had to actually pull out a measuring tape and be like,
just to make sure.
Nope, I'm right.
We compared to our old table. We saw how high that was and made the decision based off that. And then this photo is, we took a piece of the old table because it was falling apart.
Part of why we got rid of it was a lot of old veneer that was coming off and stuff like that.
It's a beautiful table, but it was just, it was on its last legs. So we took a piece and we glued it in here and put the date, and then we signed our names in there. And then the final picture here is the first game we played with our game group. We broke out Jamaica and played it with everybody. Jamaica's not a big game, but you can kind of see how much room we had to play. Yeah, I remember when we first brought everybody into the room, we were like, we have a surprise for everybody. Because we have a dedicated group, we play every week.
We didn't hint at all what the surprise was. Like, I think some of them probably were like, oh, they got a new game or something like that.
So when they came in, the first thing was like, oh, you finally got a table. You finally purchased a table. And we were like, yeah, we finally got a table. And then when everybody was sitting, we were like, well, we have a little something to say. We built this table. And nobody could believe us.
Yeah, after they saw, like, the topper and the cup holder, so, like, you didn't build this table. Yeah. Like, we built this table and we have the pictures to prove it.
And we don't build furniture, ever. Like, this is not a thing we do. So it was almost, like, satisfying to hear them be like, oh, you finally bought a table. Because it came out so nice. It was really, really satisfying that first time we got to play on it with everybody, and it's been great ever since. We use it all the time, and it's one of the best investments we ever made, and we saved literally hundreds if not thousands of dollars These tables are not cheap. And again, I don't want to put down those companies that make them because they cost a lot because they're a lot of work.
It's a lot of work. They use expensive materials. They make it out of solid oak or whatever wood you ask for.
What we're trying to say is they know what they're doing. We don't. So it makes sense. And if you don't have the tools, or you say you just don't want to spend the time to do it, then by all means go that route.
And I think we knew going into it that it was a risk.
Yeah, we weren't sure.
We might buy all these materials and think we've got the plan down and try to put it together, and it doesn't come out square plumb, or it's less even than. And I'm the kind
of person that if something is slightly wrong, like with something I did, I will just never not see it. So like every time I'd sit down and be like, "Yep, that's right there. That's a problem. I didn't." So I'm glad that it came out the way it did, and at first, I think I mentioned this in the beginning, I did not want to do this because I was like, leave it to the professionals. I don't know what I'm doing. We've never built a table before. I don't want to end up with a table we're not happy with.
I think at first too, we thought we were going to have to invest in more tools.
That too, yeah.
And like I said, we probably spent maybe $100 in tools, like fasteners, stain.
But that's expected. If you're going to be putting something like this together, you're going to spend a little money on the materials to make it. Not just the wood, but the tools. You may not have a drill. You may have to get one. But in the long run, you're going to have that equipment to be able to use it for other products.
I just remembered something.
What?
I remembered what stain we used.
What was the color?
Dark walnut.
Oh, dark walnut, yeah. So I think the moral of the story here is don't be afraid to try this.
But make sure that you put in the time and the investment to
plan it.
Do it the right way.
Do it the right way, because you will, if you're anything like me, if you don't do it the right way, you're going to be upset with yourself and not be happy. If it's a little
wobbly or one leg is slightly shorter than the rest, you'll be very mad with yourself.
Yeah, don't be like me. Have some patience. I remember we were halfway through the table and I was just so excited to have it that I started to move too quick and made a couple mistakes, so I had to like tone it down. But with a little patience and a really good game plan, like I said, I think I planned this for 2 weeks plus, like drawing it out multiple times to figure it out, multiple trips to the store. With a good game plan and some patience and time, I think anybody can do this. It was stressful a little bit going through the process, and we hit some roadblocks and we made some mistakes, but in the end it all worked out. And this is one of the best things we've ever done. Let us know if you have questions about what we did, how we did it,
or why we made the decisions we made.
Yeah, just leave a comment below. But I hope you enjoyed the video. We wanted to share this information with you, and I hope it was helpful. So good luck in your table ventures. Do it. If you're afraid, just go for it.
Go for it, but plan and do it the right way.
Exactly. With a little patience. Don't be like me. Have some patience. I got way too excited with building this, and I moved a little too quick. But yeah. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and we will see you real soon.
Good night.
Good night.